press this button. I'm going to see what happens.
So am I looking good?
Actually, look, I think it does. It's hard for me to tell. You have a little shadow on you. So you may want to move a little more towards the sun. You may want to move a little more into it. Yeah. Yeah, that's good though. Yeah, it's just the hat.
Yeah, I won't burn up. I'm fine wherever you need me.
All right, well, I think we're recording, so why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and what your name is and what you do and a little bit about the kind of music that you preserve and perform here at the market and elsewhere in Los Angeles every so often or every day or, you know, what your schedule is, anything like that.
All right. Well, my name is Aric Leavitt. Actually, my full name is Aric Leavitt. And Z-O-E, middle name is Zoe. Aric with an A, A-R-I-C. And this is a banjo, and the music I play is called Bluegrass primarily. I do folk, I do country, I do gospel, but primarily I encapsulate it all in the word bluegrass.
And what is the historical time range of this music mostly?
Well, first off, to define bluegrass itself, bluegrass is almost synonymous with Kentucky, and the term, it's a Kentucky term. Kentucky's the bluegrass state. Legend has it that the grass in the hills there in Kentucky are of a bluish-green color. I don't know how true that is, but Kentucky is the bluegrass state. And the father of bluegrass music is Bill Monroe, who was a descendant of the late President James Monroe. And bluegrass had its origin, you might say, in the 30s, when Bill and his brother Charlie Monroe played as a duet, as a duo.
And what year was this again?
In the 30s.
1930s.
And Bill was the mandolin player. He basically created a style of mandolin playing for bluegrass. And Charlie Monroe played the guitar. And so it started off just Bill and Charlie, mandolin and guitar. There wasn't even a banjo in the original bluegrass stuff.
And they named it Bluegrass?
The music came to be called bluegrass because these guys are from Kentucky, and Kentucky's a bluegrass state. So that's how they coined the term bluegrass.
Was it a press sort of meme of the time, do you think? Or
I guess so.
Yeah.
The word bluegrass is usually one word, but sometimes it's spelled in two words too. Same thing. I would add one more thing before we get off the subject of bluegrass, what it is even though Kentucky's the bluegrass state, my personal opinion, I think North Carolina defines bluegrass. Those hills are so majestic. I've been to North Carolina, and North Carolina has something just so rustic and raw that I haven't seen anywhere else. But it expands the whole region, the Appalachian and the Blue Ridge region, Virginia, West Virginia, Tennessee,
all right.
The Ozarks, that's Arkansas and southern Missouri, and the Appalachians go as far north as Pennsylvania, believe it or not.
So
anyway,
let me ask you something. Could a musical scholar, like yourself, for instance, tell the difference between a song that originated out of the Appalachians and that which came from Kentucky or elsewhere? Is there any characteristics?
Sometimes, but not always. I don't have a doctorate in musicology, although my training is classical. I trained, I studied classical piano from the age of 7 to 12 before I even knew what bluegrass was. See, I'm not a hill folk. I'm a city dweller.
Right.
I'm a city boy.
So, can you give me a two different riffs there on the banjo? That one might be from one area, one might be from another.
By the way, Bill Monroe formed his first full bluegrass band in 1939. The first official bluegrass band was mandolin, guitar, string bass, and a fiddle. And that was in 1939 at the Grand Ole Opry. The banjo was added in the 40s, and that's what made it complete, the banjo. And that's my instrument. I happen to be a banjo player. I play guitar too, and I have mandolin. A little Foggy Mountain breakdown.
And where would that come from? What region would this be from? And why would we? And give us a little idea how it would be different from another one that you'll play.
Oh, like this particular thing right
Yeah,
here?
what region would this be
Well,
from?
Foggy Mountain Breakdown was composed and recorded by Earl Scruggs, who played with Bill Monroe early on in the early 40s. So did Lester Flatt. Later, Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs formed their own band, the Foggy Mountain Boys.
Now, would this be Appalachian or would it be Kentucky?
Well, Kentucky is Appalachian.
All right. Well, I mean, one region or not. I mean, I want you to give me give an example of two different regions we might learn to identify.
Earl Scruggs was born in North Carolina. Lester Flatt was born in Tennessee, East Tennessee. And so Foggy Mountain Breakdown basically is East Tennessee and western North Carolina and around the Blue Ridge Mountains there. And Foggy Mountain Breakdown, which they later used as the theme for Bonnie and Clyde, the movie. Remember that? First tune I ever learned to play. My banjo instructor was Jerry Garcia, who later got his fame and fortune with the Grateful Dead. I went in for my first lesson with Jerry, and that was in 1964. I was a junior in high school. Or was I a sophomore? I think I was a sophomore, actually. Yeah, I was a sophomore, 15. And Jerry was 21 at the time. And I had already figured out Foggy Mountain Breakdown before I went in, and I showed it off to him, and instead of getting pats and praises, I got some criticism from Jerry. He said, well, number one, you're here to learn. You're playing too fast. Number two, that hammer-on roll that you're doing, that Earl does, it's called a hammer-on. Well, he doesn't just go like this. He goes, he hits that string, that next string with it to fill in the gap. And I taught all my students this technique, the fill-in technique. When you're doing something with the left hand, like a hammer-on or a pull-off or a slide, you're creating an artificial note, artificially, with the left hand that has to be filled in. Nature abhors a vacuum. You got to fill it in with a real bona fide pluck of another string. And that's part of what makes bluegrass what it is, the unique sound that it is. The half notes, like one fret to another, that's a half note. That's really predominant in bluegrass. So I learned all that.
Example of another region now.
Okay. A little Black Mountain Rag, okay? Fiddle tune. See when I went just like this? That's one right there. Half notes there between here and here, and then when I do my little offshoot arrangement of it, I'm really emphasizing that sound there. But when you listen closely to when I go like this, what do you hear there? Does that remind you of anything? Well, that's a bagpipe. The origin of bluegrass music is in the Scots-Irish Celtic sound, because the settlers came over from the British Isles. Bill Monroe was a Scotsman, and the sound he put in the mandolin, in his unique style of playing the mandolin, is all Scots-Irish. And that's in the bagpipe sound. And strangely enough, bagpipes, where do you think they originated? Let me give you a little quiz here.
The Highlands.
Okay, oh well, that's what everyone thinks. That's what I thought for a long time.
That's what they told me.
Bagpipes were in Ireland before they were in Scotland, and before they were in Ireland, they were in Egypt. They emanated in Egypt, of all places. And it's in the Bible.
Well, now let me ask you where you emanate from when you perform here. Where's some of the places that you perform in Los Angeles so we can come and see some real bluegrass?
Bringing it down home here to the big city. I play the Studio City Farmers Market here generally every Sunday. I used to play post offices. Go to post offices every day. I don't do that anymore too much. I do some others. I got other things going, but I do play at certain Trader Joe's. Generally in the Pasadena area. It's worth it. Those people got the bucks, and boy, they got the culture too. They really appreciate it. And even the store appreciates it. For Trader Joe's to be appreciating a street musician, that's pretty unusual, because they usually don't like anybody out there.
So if anybody wants to know where you're going to be performing, what would they do?
Well, I would say come to the Farmers Market in Studio City, where you got the open air market. That's the best place to come.
Every Sunday from 12 till like 1:30?
Well,
like
I try to get here earlier. I don't always succeed, but 11:30 to about 1:30. Sometimes I'm late, like today, but being a night person, I sometimes just can't make it.
All right, well, thank you very much, Aric. Aric Leavitt or Leavitt?
It is Leavitt. Leave it to Leavitt to love it, maybe. You want to hear one or two more riffs before we sign off?
Sure, why not?
Why don't we give them a little...
play us out and we'll
all right.
Let this sucker off.
Maybe a little Cripple Creek.
Precious moment.
Okay. A little Cripple Creek here, maybe? Old-timey traditional style here with, notice I'm playing it a little differently here. I'm not completely finger picking. There's a little strum put in there, make it a little more traditional.
Traditional meaning what year?
Oh, way before bluegrass came to be known as bluegrass.
Well,
this is where
we're
going back into the 1800s, back in the hills.
1860s, 1840s?
Yeah, maybe. Well, even some can go back to colonial days, like Soldier's Joy, an old fiddle tune. But one last thought I definitely want to get recorded here and get it in, is that the singing, the vocals of bluegrass harmony originated in the churches. The church groups, the hymns that they sang back in the hills. I'll give you one little sample here. I heard about a man one day who wasted not his time away. He prayed to God every morning, noon and night. He cared not for the things of Baal, trusted God who never failed. Oh, Daniel prayed every morning, noon and night. Oh, Daniel served his living God while here upon this earth he trod. Oh, Daniel prayed every morning, noon and night. He cared not for the things, he cared not for the king's decree. Trusted God who set him free. Oh, Daniel prayed every morning, noon and night.
There you have it. Aric Leavitt here at the Farmers Market in Studio City. Thank you very much, Aric.
You're very welcome.